Thank you very much for your kind introduction. You know, whenever I've listened to one of Kim's talks, I always feel so happy, and because when I'm financially depressed, especially because after his talk you have the feeling there's money in the air. You may have to make an effort to get it, but it's there. It's waiting for us to be used. Now, I will not be talking about money at all. Actually, I'll not even talk about business, unlike many people here today. I'll talk about something entirely different. It's about the soft sciences. Now, first I'll explain you what this is all about, and then I'll tell you something about CLARIN, our dream, the vision, the phasing, the CLARIN Eric, our nightmares, action lines, and some concluding remarks. Now, first of all, what are we talking about? Well, basically, if you look around you, you see that there's a wealth of digital language data around all over Europe, in many different archives, repositories, university institutes, etc., etc. And all this language material reflects human behavior, human communication, human knowledge, human culture, etc. And this is an enormously rich source of data and information knowledge for humanities and social sciences scholars. That's historians, philosophers, social scientists, all these soft people that some of your friends might be soft people. And although you would normally be more selective and take hard friends, I'm sure. But in addition to all this material, that's basically, let's say, dead material, we also have the results of more than 30 years of European HLT efforts, both at the European level and at the national level. So there's a wealth of knowledge, tools, applications that could be used to explore, exploit, manipulate all these data. So that is, at least from our point of view, for the humanities and social sciences, an enormous opportunity to innovate itself and to become world leaders in research in this area. And why am I claiming that we can be world leaders? That's precisely because of our, let's say, multilingual Europe, because in not many other parts of the world they are confronted with these multilingual issues. Because if you're studying history or whatever, then the history of your own country doesn't exist. You're always part of the European history, because, for example, if you look at, well, a country like Poland, when you see, I've once seen animation of the Poland situated on the European map, and it's moving back and forth, expanding, it's like an amoeba. It's very interesting. So you can't study history in isolation. You're always part of a big thing. So this is a wonderful opportunity, and now there's one but, a big but. That is that how do humanities and social sciences scholars know about the existence of these data? How do you know what's sitting in, let's say, in our university library or the National Library of Estonia or whatever? You don't know. And even if you know it exists, how can you get access to it? I wouldn't know how to get access to material in some library in Warsaw. Even if I'm there now, I wouldn't know where to start. And how do the historians, etc., know what sort of tools exist that they can use to retrieve, explore, and exploit these data? They simply don't know it. And once you have an enlightened humanities scholar who realizes that there are things that could help him there, and it's still very hard to decompose, let's say, a historical question or a theological question or a philosophical question into bits and pieces or sub-questions that can be answered by digital means. So there is an enormous gap between the wonderful things that we can offer the humanities scholars and let's say, the possibility for them to really adopt this in their daily research practice. And our answer to this is CLARIN, which stands for the Common Language Resources and Technology Infrastructure for the Humanities and Social Sciences. Very often you see the abbreviation SSH, but since I'm from the humanities, I prefer to put H in at the front. That's just chauvinism. Now, CLARIN in a nutshell. Many of you will know a lot about CLARIN, so I'm not going to explain all the details. Many of you are involved in CLARIN. Basically, what we want to do is we want to create a European federation of all the digital repositories that contain useful data for us and tools to be used to work with the data. And we want to give access to these tools so that people can use them on the data that is available. And we want to give very easy single sign-on access. Well, you all most of you may know, be familiar with EduRoam. You know, these days when you go to foreign university, you can just, you switch on your computer, you connect it to EduRoam, and it's a very easy way to get connected to the academic network with your own identity wherever you are, and that's the same we want to achieve for access to these data for the scholars. Our target audience is humanities and social sciences scholars, so it's not industry. And we want to cover all EU and associated countries and all the languages that are relevant for our target audience. So it's not just the main national language, also the local languages and even the languages of immigrant communities. So we are very ambitious in that respect. Now, this is the CLARIN Dream, this sketches the CLARIN Dream. Those are some examples of the sort of things that we would like to make possible for our audience. And I'm not going to go through all the examples, but you will see, well, some of them sound a bit, well, maybe futuristic, although I think that if you're working in technology, you will recognize that in each of these examples, let's say the technologies that are needed that are already there. Some of them are rather well developed, some of them are even mature, some are still embryonic, but they're all there. You can see that it can be done. And maybe not now, but maybe in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, because we are doing this for the future. Now, the underlying vision is that language is very important. Language is at the heart of many disciplines in humanities and social sciences. I'm just mentioning some examples: object of study, means of human communication, expression, record of our history, part of cultural identity, carrying of knowledge, information. There are more also, but this is just a few examples. And we want to support all these uses of language and all these ways of studying language. And of course, you could say that language and speech technology, they're part of this, you know, because we see many departments of computational linguistics and speech sciences, etc. But that's not all, because they are only a small part, and whereas, for example, in language speech technology, most researchers are interested in collecting bulk data that they can use to develop and train applications and tools. Most of our target audience will be more interested in the content that's contained in this language material. So it's a different perspective, but it's all equally relevant. Now, so what we want to offer is, make sure that whatever data exists can be found and can be referred to in a persistent way, so that if you, in a publication, you refer to some language resource now, you want to make sure that it can still be found under the same URL or whatever in 10 years' time when people want to get back to your work. And we want to allow for not just metadata search, but also content search. And not just within a data collection, but across collections, so that you really do search. That's what we want to do. We haven't done it yet. You can do search over, all publications about the city of Warsaw in all European libraries. Something like that. Very ambitious, but that's the sort of thing that we have in mind. And this is all done through web services and workflows, so that people can, researchers can combine data from different sources and tools from different sources and just chain them to workflows that perform complex linguistic operations. And we are both thinking about contemporary language material and historical material, and in all modalities, spoken, written, video, audio, sign language, whatever. And we want to serve both expert users, which is rather easy because these people, they're easy to talk to, they're just like us, but also to non-expert people like real historians or philosophers or theologists, and that's a lot harder. And we also want to offer access to long-term preservation, to depositing and long-term preservation services, so that material that's created now in the course of the project will not just fade away in a couple of years' time, because no one feels responsible for it. Now, phasing of CLARIN, does CLARIN exist? Well, I'm talking about it as if it exists, and does it exist? Well, yes and no. From 2008 to 2011, we had funding from the European Commission for what was called the CLARIN Preparatory Phase project, and the goal there was to design the infrastructure, and both in the technical sense and in the organizational sense, and to line up the key players. In 2012, we started the next phase, the construction phase, and we hope that by 2050 we will have something that we can show to the public. I would hope already a bit earlier, because you know, many researchers are not that patient. I'm not that patient, so I would very much like to see something already, maybe in the course of next year, some experimental things, some showcases to show what we want to do. This construction phase is funded by the participating countries. There's not a single euro of EU funding, so it's all national money. We want to build the European infrastructure, and then after 2015 we'll be in the exploitation phase when the infrastructure can really be used. And again, that will be funded by the participating countries, not by the EC. Of course, we may want to apply for EC funding, but the EC has not made any financial commitments to funding this. And we want to make it running, keep it running, and populate it with more and more resources and tools. Now, CLARIN ERIC, I'm the director of CLARIN ERIC. What's CLARIN ERIC? Well, that's a basic governance body for CLARIN, and governance coordination body. And the CLARIN ERIC itself will not have any servers or will not have any technicians. It's really a governance and coordination body. And what's an ERIC? An ERIC is a European Research Infrastructure Consortium. It's a new type of intergovernmental legal entity created by the European Commission with a specific purpose to act as a governance body of European infrastructures. Because it's very hard to find the right legal form. I mean, most of you will not be interested in legal forms, but we will have to solve the problem of finding the right legal form to govern this research infrastructure. And the members are countries, so the members of CLARIN are not universities or libraries or whatever, they are countries, they are governments, ministries. And in each country, if a country joins CLARIN, they will, they have to make a formal agreement, and they have to commit themselves to creating a national CLARIN consortium that does all the work. Because the ministries don't work, because they are ministries, they just administer things, but the real work has to be done by the national consortium. That's where you find the universities and the archives and libraries or whatever. And now, what exactly is done within the country is not decided by CLARIN ERIC. It's decided by let's say, on the basis of national priorities by the funding agencies in that country. Because we would never, as CLARIN ERIC, we would never want to dictate that every country has to digitize old poems from the 16th century. Why would we do that? Because, well, if that happens to be a research priority in your country, you would be happy. But why would Malta want to do that? They might not even have poems from the period. So every country decides on the basis of its own research priority what they want to digitize, what tools they want to make, but every country has to commit itself to doing such things and to specifying beforehand what exactly that they are going to do. Well, this CLARIN ERIC was established on the 29th of February this year, and with 9 founding members. So you see the countries, Austria, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Germany, Denmark, Estonia, the Netherlands, Poland, and the DLU is not a country, it's another intergovernmental body. It's the Dutch Language Union, which is the intergovernmental body between the Netherlands and Belgium that's responsible for the Dutch language. So only countries can be part of it. And I must say that I'm extremely happy that Poland was one of the founding members, because from the very beginning, also in the preparatory phase project, Poland has been a very active and important player. And so we were happy when the Polish government decided to join this founding consortium. And last night I heard informally that even the funding for the National Polish Consortium seems to be okay now, and you can start spending it fairly. So maybe you need a few signatures before you can start spending it, but it's coming. So that's wonderful. So I'm very, very happy. And of course, more countries are preparing themselves to join their pipeline. But since this is about joining an intergovernmental body, some governments need more time than others to get used to this idea. And in some countries, even the president has to sign, and in other countries it can be done at the ministry level. But we are patient because we have time. But in the end, we want to have all the countries in, not just those 9, because if you want to make a pan-European infrastructure, it doesn't make sense to have only a small number of countries, and they're all missing some very important and big countries, missing very important big languages. So we won't stop persuading countries to join. Now, what's so nice about having an ERIC? Well, for us, it's interesting. They're legal entities. And ERIC is a legal entity which means that, well, first of all, it's not a project, and a legal entity is something that is sustainable in principle, because you create it and then it remains alive as long as you see the need for it. So it makes it more sustainable, because infrastructures of this type have to be sustainable. And members are governments, and you know, commitment from governments is always more than commitment from universities. And it's also the existence of this ERIC is a sign of recognition by the governments and by the European Commission of the importance of sharing language resources. And it's also an advantage to be close to the funding agency, because if the ministry feels, let's say, ownership for this infrastructure, they will also help you to enforce, for example, the use of standards in projects at the fund, or the obligation to share results, language resources that result from projects. I also think it's a very good starting point for international collaboration, because you're, well, an international body, and it's from that point, from that position, it's easier to make contact with governments in third countries. And ERICs, that's a nice advantage. ERICs are a single thing, they're a single legal entity, but they can behave as if they were a whole consortium. So a single ERIC can just submit an application for a European project, and they will be accepted as a valid consortium. And we also have a VAT exemption, which is interesting if you're building big things, but for us it's not very interesting. But we have to keep in mind that even if this ERIC is there forever, we are still dependent on the funding from the national countries on the basis of the national funding cycles. Now, back to the examples I gave, and now it's not no longer a dream, now it's a nightmare, because if you look a bit closer at the examples, I won't go through all of them, you will see that they are not unproblematic. This first one, simply give me all digital copies of documents about the Great Plague. Well, all means that you want to have them from all countries and from all archives, not just from the 9 that happen to be a member of the ERIC. If they exist in digital form at all, well, what sort of digital form do they have? Very often they are PDFs, but what can you do with PDFs? Maybe PDFs of modern documents could be okay, but imagine PDFs as old documents, of old manuscripts. I mean, it's a non-trivial thing to work with that. Could you use OCR techniques? Can we rely on standardized metadata to find them? They may be in Latin, and what's the status of Latin in language technology? So you see there are lots of hard problems that we have to solve, and the biggest problem of all is, let's say, the uptake by our user community. Because how can scholars become aware of the fact that all this stuff exists and that they can use it? So I think that's the hardest job of all that we have. That's my real nightmare, I would say. And if you look at the tools offered by language and speech technology, well, they never directly answer a research question that a historian would ask. You know, it's like I call it the gearbox syndrome. You know, the historian is waiting for a bus that will take him to his destination. So he's standing there, and then language technology comes by and just throws in front of him with a very proud smile a gearbox, and then he moves on. And then, well, this historian tries to sit on it, doesn't move, doesn't do anything at all, so he's not helped by that. And that's the way language technologists tend to talk to historians, because they say, well, I've got this wonderful tokenizer, or I have an entity recognizer, but it doesn't ring any bell for the poor historian. So we really have to make an effort to translate, let's say, the blessings that we have into things that the historian or philosopher so will understand. And that's really hard work. Now, what do we do? Well, again, I'm not going through all the details of our action program. I just want to show that we are aware of all these problems, that we are really undertaking actions in order to overcome them. How successful we will be, we don't know yet. But we want to have at least 20 member countries in 5 years, and rather more. We very much need to have a solution, partial solution to the legal issues. That, well, we also heard in the Meta presentation, that's an important point. We need to integrate data, because the fact that all these data are sitting in different places in Europe does not automatically mean that they can be combined, that the tools can be combined. So it's really very important action, a very important step for us to identify standards that people can use in order to make to allow for data exchange, interoperability between tools and services, and we have to make sure that there is a place to preserve results in all European countries. Now, the ease of access, because we think that it's not enough to have just a, let's say, technical infrastructure to preserve all, to give access to everything. We need in parallel a knowledge sharing infrastructure, an infrastructure that also helps the users to use all the wonderful stuff they can get and to exchange experience so that people don't have to reinvent wheels. We also want to cross borders because I think it's very important to, given the fact that we have language, I think it gives us a very interesting possibility to cross borders to other disciplines because language is omnipresent, and we want to make sure that we are sustainable. My concluding remarks, as you may have heard from what I've said, is there's still a lot of work to do, but it's very important to realize, as I already said, CLARIN is not a project. It has a start, and no fixed end. It's like a marriage, you know? And of course, when you get married, you never do it for 3 days, 3 years or 36 months, so you just say, well, it's basically forever, and then you will see how it goes. Some marriages last longer, and some are, well, have a less happy life. But basically, for us, it's like a marriage. There's an enormous backlog in legacy resources that need to be upgraded because they're all according to old standards. It's very important that language and speech technology are further developed from both for the big language and the small languages. But you should realize that proven technologies for a modern version of a language do not always work for older version of the language, so much effort might be needed there. And the adoption of digital methods in the humanities is a very key issue. And we also think that collaboration with the HLT community as such is very important. That's the reason why we already made a collaboration agreement with the Meta project when we were still a project. And I'm looking forward to continuing this collaboration, maybe in a new shape, because Meta will change its shape and we have changed shape, but I'm sure we will find ways to do that. Thank you.
Enlightening and entertaining overview of the CLARIN. Any comments or questions? Yes? Take the microphone.
Maybe my voice will do it like this anyway. Ah, okay, yeah.
Thank you. Sebastian Bruder from the Max Planck Institute in Nijmegen. And of course a friend and colleague of CLARIN. I have a more general question which maybe also goes to Kimmo Rossi and other people present here, and which you addressed briefly during your presentation, which is the backlog of old data in old formats. I have an even more serious problem, I think, which is old data, which is very valuable, but is not even yet there in digital formats at all, right? So in the last 30, 40 years, there have been many, many recordings and audio and videos, especially in ethnographic fieldwork, for instance, from all the cultures of all over the world, which are vanishing away. And we have so many valuable materials, which is in some drawers by some researchers, and I just don't know how to approach this. Right now, there is a congress in Vancouver by UNESCO who is addressing this topic, but UNESCO doesn't have any funding for such things. And they say me, so the European Union would be a good place to start because most of the research has been done in European universities and most of the materials is actually located in Europe. But all those tapes, all those old materials are vanishing away in these decades, and if we don't start to identify them and collect them and digitize them, many of the material that could be made available via MetaNet, via CLARIN, via all those networks which are rising right now, will never be accessible. And this is a real great problem, I think. So, which is the initiative, which is the funding, where can we get to start to get hold of old, very valuable heritage materials which are not even yet in digital format? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I absolutely share your concerns, because this is a concern of mine as well, and of the whole CLARIN community. One thing one easy answer that won't make you very happy is that CLARIN itself has no funds to do that. You know, CLARIN Eric has very modest funds just to organize itself. And I would also expect that at the national level, well, of course, if such a resource is of national importance, you could try to find some money at the national level. I would hope that in some of the EC programs there will be space for, let's say, protecting and preserving this type of information, because I think it's very important material and it should be preserved. But I would not know which, let's say, of all the European programs would feel, let's say, responsible to come in here. I don't know, Kimmo, do you have any answer to this? I don't have it. I mean, I wish I had it.
Yes, we don't have budgetary resources for doing that. That's a simple answer. And it's difficult enough and expensive enough actually to make the electronically already machine-readable language resources available, as the people in the Meta project can confirm. And we are not done with that yet. So maybe then the question whether we have exhausted all these electronically available resources, maybe then available, maybe then the question comes that what needs to be digitized. Now, we have not been, European Commission funding programs have not been very keen on subsidizing digitization. For example, in the Europeana Digital Library project, it's not in the scope of the program to support digitization. It's probably the one who has the interest in digitizing should be the owner of the data, or of the or at least then, if not the owner of the data, then the member states who is holding that data. I would say that this is very much the case for language resources, because but I'm only talking about language resources now, not about historical historical files or things like that. Why? Because each country has a language, and they are the country itself is in the position, has the most of the interest in supporting that language as part of the ecosystem of digital services. Then who can support and fund digitization? In Europeana, it has been mostly Google which has been supporting digitization, and that's one possible model. So that's why I just cannot pretend and say that we could start funding digitization, because there are so many priorities above that have not yet been satisfied, that are far from that. So it's constant battle with limited budgetary